Going Dan Shinder here on Drum Talk TV, coming to you from Globe, Arizona. It's 100 miles east of Phoenix, up in the mountains in a very small town, hiding out. Also hiding out is our guest, Jimmy Keegan, who's in an undisclosed location in the San Fernando Valley. We can't tell you, they'll kick him out. Jimmy, welcome.
You don't want to know where I am.
It's been a while, man.
It has been. I'm going to be in your neck of the woods in January. We got to meet up. Yeah, I got a show coming up in January in Phoenix. You got to come out.
Oh wow, we would love to. I hope it's not during CES. I might be going to CES.
I don't know. It's in January.
Okay, cool. We'll check it out. Do you know where the venue is?
I do, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
No problem.
I don't keep back. I got the worst promoter with those kinds of things. I have a gig coming up. Where?
That's
I
cool.
don't know.
As we get closer, we'll have you back on. We'll promote it, talk all about it, and tell people. We'll kind of mislead them, tell them all about the extended version of Freebird you're going to play, Smoke on the Water.
I hope not. It won't work for the Led Zeppelin theme that we have going on.
Awesome. So let's start with what has been going on the last few years with Pattern Seeking Animals. And you got a new album coming out, Spooky Action at a Distance.
2 weeks.
Yeah,
Ish.
Steve's going to put the link in there where people can get it. Debuts October 27th. I think there's a neat conversation to be had, first off, in the name of the band, even though some people might know the story. The name of the band and the name of the album. Start with the name of the band, and then I have a question about the members. Then we'll talk about the album, and I'll show the album cover. But first, what's with the name of the band? Where'd this come from?
There's a song that we just, in a weird way, we covered because originally Spock's Beard did it. John wrote it, and Spock did a song called Bulletproof. And in that song, there is a lyric where he makes a reference to human beings being pattern-seeking animals.
Oh.
And in the process of writing it, he loved the way that sounded. And it would be like 2 or 3 years before the concept of pattern-seeking animals would take flight. But for some reason, that phrase stuck with him. It wasn't the name of the band. We still threw out, like a dozen names before we all, but it was the one that we all kind of went, I like that one. What else do you got? I like that one. What else do you got? But once we had listed, it was like, it was pretty easy. But yeah, pattern seeking animal. I mean, what are we? I mean, I think there's a technical term for it. I forget. There's some kind of scientific term for pattern seeking animals, but
yeah.
I think it's the whole idea that, with music, what is music but a series of frequencies put together in a particular artistic math. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put together in a specific order, which is also, and we find patterns in it, and humans make sense of it,
Yeah. I like that.
It's one of those things I always wonder what aliens would make of it.
Oh, they must think we're so primitive.
I don't know.
We are compared to...
it's hard to say, but the idea of music is one of those things that's because it's math based. I wonder if it's a question of how do other creatures hear, but if they hear things in a similar fashion to us, what do they make? What do other animals make sense of it? I know some animals acknowledge it.
Yeah,
they hear music and they respond to it. But anyway,
absolutely,
pattern seeking animals.
I love it. So I'm gonna put up a photo of the band, which we have up. And what I'd like you to do, for those who don't know, for their edification, name each of their band member, what they play, and one word to describe them. It's like a game show, peeking around the picture.
So I don't see the picture, but
no, you don't. You can name them in any order.
So Ted Leonard, singer, guitar player. Nut.
Okay. Good. Boils down to one syllable with one vowel. I like it. Who's next?
Dave Maros, bass. Older nut.
Wrinkled like a walnut.
And the last name of our fearless leader is Baghold, John Baghold. His primary role is he does the majority of the songwriting, the production, and all of the keyboards and a lot of random guitar and guitar-like instruments. Mm-hmm. So if it isn't traditional electric guitar, drums, or bass, it's John.
Got it.
Or it's session musicians. It's horn players that we brought in. One word to describe John. I don't have one word to describe John.
That's more than one word, but it works. Okay.
I don't have one for John.
That's okay. Let's move on to Spooky Action at a Distance. How did that name come about? And I'm going to put up the beautiful album art. I just love this. It's so
Thank you.
provocative and evocative as well. There's a little bit of steampunk going on there with the whatever that is, telescope or a porthole. He's looking through a porthole. It's really interesting. Give us a bit of history on how this came about and the history of the actual artwork as well.
So, bear with me one second here. I'm going to look something up. The artwork for all of our albums, as well as a lot of the Spock's Beard record, is Thomas Uberhard. I forget how to pronounce his name. Anyway, he's phenomenal. The name of this record and the artwork for this record was one of the strangest for both of these bands and any band. I started getting emails from John about, okay, we got to come up with a name. And first we toyed around with the idea of choosing a song title as a name. And that got shot down pretty quickly. And then John started throwing out some ideas and Dave responded. We didn't hear anything from Ted. And I kept thinking I was responding. But what I was doing is reading the emails and then going back and doing my gig. I'm like on a break, I'm like, okay, I got to remember to respond to this. And then I'd go back and do the gig. And I realized I never responded until one day I just called John and said, yeah, man, whatever you guys said, it was all good. So the two of them kind of conferred about this. Spooky Action at a Distance, if I'm not mistaken, is an Einstein
reference?
It's reference.
Interesting.
It's something related to quantum physics. And so I think Thomas, he listens to the lyrics and then he takes into consideration the song title and kind of mishes it all together. And we always find ourselves getting the covers and just kind of going, whoa,
wow,
wow, okay, there's a lot to.
I could see how this cover would do that. It's amazing.
Yeah, this one did that. It's I was surprised by the color scheme. A lot of white and these little really sharp blues and grays, and I love the last cover as well, the one with the sort of gorillas with cities on their backs, walking through. It's just the most very hypnosis type.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone else is thinking this or if you have, but it looks like Doc from Back to the Future looking through the thing.
Oh yeah, huh? I didn't think of that.
I keep looking for an Easter egg DeLorean hidden in the hills there or something. Hoverboard.
An odd coincidental reference, maybe.
Yeah, that's really neat. Though
I did a voiceover job for Back to the Future.
Did you? What part was it?
I did. I am the voice of the kid when Marty first goes back in time. He runs into. I'm looking at the cover here just to see this reference. When Marty first goes back in time, he runs into the barn, and then he comes out in the nuclear suit, and the kid has the comic book, and he starts saying, "It's a space alien from Mars, shoot it!" Oh. And so I looped his voice. I replaced his voice.
Wow, how neat!
Back, that was obviously I was 15 years old when that took place, but got to meet Steven Spielberg and Michael J. Fox and Bob Zemeckis and all in one day. They just happened to be walking out as I walked in.
Wow. Were you doing a lot of that type of work back then?
I did a lot of that in my teens. A lot of voiceover cartoons and voiceover acting. I did on-screen acting as well, but a lot more cartoon work and film work in that regard.
That's cool. We were chatting a little bit with my son Steve, our producer, before we went live, and I asked you something, and you caught it too. As soon as you started answering, we thought, this is better. Let's save it for the interview. And I asked the question, does it seem like the last 4 or 5 years have gone by quickly with pattern-seeking animals? And it seemed like that was a gateway to a deep conversation of what the experience has been like.
Yeah, well, the whole band kind of started as John may have a different take on this, but my understanding is it started with with Inside Out, the record label, going to John saying, "Hey, dude, why don't you do a record?" He had these different thoughts about, because he did so much writing for Spock's Beard and that kind of thing. So an offer was kind of put out to him to put out an album, sort of like the way Alan Parsons, kind of from Alan Parsons' perspective of being sort of the producer, songwriter, musician, but having a band kind of just guest musicians. This song is these guys and this song is these guys, and not really necessarily a consistent batch of musicians as much as just a consistent middle artist.
Almost a Steely Dan type of thing, except that's a pair of guys. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So he hit me up about it initially, talking about it, and it was kind of it was both talking to me about it, as a contributing member, but also as, hey, help me put together these guys. Mm-hmm. A bunch of other people that I might think of, maybe some horn players and stuff like that. So between his batch of friends over the years and my batch of friends over there, we started putting together names and everything. But the first few songs, he said, well, I want to do the first few songs with you, Ted, and Dave. So the three of us, besides being members of Spock's Beard, we also had a cover band that we worked with. So it would become very, very solid as a rhythm section. And the other thing he was keen on is having Ted play a lot more guitar, because he's mostly known as a singer.
Yeah.
And his guitar playing gets kind of put to the side because he's always in a band that has this really interesting, unique, or, like burning lead guitar player, whether it's in Chant or Spock's or, and so on. So his part of it was, let's get Ted like properly playing guitar on this. So we tracked a couple of songs and kind of went, this is really cool. It's not exactly what I was thinking. It's a lot better than I expected it to be. We were all really pleasantly surprised with how it came out. So we decided, let's do a few more and just see how it feels. So we got about 2/3 of the way into it, and then had a conversation about turning it into a band, which obviously it's like, okay, well, what are the Spock's Beard fans going to say? And how much crap are we going to take over that? Because obviously Spock's it's kind of gotten quiet as of late.
Yeah.
So the fans are of the mindset that the band is finished. I don't know that the band is finished. I mean, as far as Ted and Dave say, it's not. I know that they're not aggressively pursuing another album. Al Morris is doing a solo record. Ryo Okamoto just put out a solo record. Ted and Dave and I just did these records. All the other guys are doing their things as they've branched off and so on and so forth. So I just don't think it's a priority at the moment. I think it's kind of, there really isn't an inspiration to do a Spock's record as much as the fans would like that. And, we want fans to be happy, but I'm saying we as if I'm part of that. But I mean, we're all in the family in some fashion, whether we're immediately in the band or not, Right. We all know what Nick is doing and we know what Neil is doing and everything. So we all like cheer it on from the sides.
Right.
So this came on. So, okay, let's make it a band. Great. So now John is actually in the band as opposed to a behind the scenes. And we finished the album. We were really happy with it. We put it out. We got really nice response from it. And COVID hit. So we couldn't tour. We couldn't do any shows. We just kind of went, well, here you go. Here's a record.
Yeah.
Ta-da! Ta-da! And people said, okay, that's great. So we did videos and what everyone else did. We did at-home videos. In the meantime, John just writes all day. He's at home. He has a day job that allows him to just write all day. It's a kind of he manages apartments. Oh. So he can sit home and write all day long. He has no interest in being a live musician whatsoever anyway. So we put the album out and he was already started. I think by the time the album was released, he'd already had 3 or 4 songs ready for the next record.
Wow.
So within 3 or 4 months of the release of the first album, we started getting Dropbox notifications that here's the first 4 or 5 songs. We started recording within, I think, 4 months of the release, and we were done within 8 months. And then just because of the nature of, how long it takes to process the CDs and the vinyl and stuff like that, it was roughly a year. And the second album came out, still in the middle of COVID, still no live shows. And we put it out and we did videos and we did all the promotion that we could within that world. And John started writing. And
So it
before
just
we knew
kept
it,
kind of
just
rolling
kept
along and
going. We had our
leapfrogging.
third album within 3 years or something like that. And we put the third album out. I think this one was delayed a little bit again because it's like 6 months for vinyl. So it pushed it into the next year. But we had it finished. We literally had 3 albums inside of 3 years.
That's like the old days, with when I think of Led
Elton
Zeppelin
John.
and Rush,
Yeah.
Elton John, it was just one after another, album tour, writing on the tour, get home, crank out the other. I
Yeah.
love that you guys were able to do that. Would you have been that prolific in putting out albums with touring in between, even if it, of course, extended the time?
Sure.
Would you have been like back to back because
I
of
don't
his
think it would have
writing?
had. Yeah, I don't think it would have had an influence because John has no interest in playing live. So we would have gone out with the extra members,
Ah,
and it would have been on stage. It would have been the 3 of us plus 2 other
some
guys.
backup.
We currently it's Dennis Atlas and Walter Eno,
Oh,
but I mean they're not really. I don't know how permanent that is. It's sort of like Chester Thompson and
Daryl Sturmer.
and Daryl Sturmer. It's
Yeah.
like, are they in the band? Sure, as
When
long as
we
we're
play
touring.
live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we would have gone out and played. The weird thing is we are now releasing our 4th album, and when I try to get venues, like on the East Coast where they're all bunched together, or in Europe, when I try to get them to book a tour, they still respond like we're a new band. So this is what I'm
Really?
getting about how it's weird because we have this Spock's beard weight
Yeah.
on our shoulders of everyone looks at us and kind of goes, it's basically just Spock's beard without, those guys.
And with different music.
Well, yeah.
There's that. Like, how does that not wake people up out of that? Because it is different, I think.
It is different, but at the same time, it's like the last couple of records, as soon as you hear Ted's voice, it's like, well, I mean, it's going to sound like Spock's beard. My drumming is going to make it sound a certain degree like some of the Spock's beard stuff. Dave's bass tones, you can't get away from Dave's bass tones. It's
Yeah.
really signature sound. So, I mean, there's always, even, when we try drastically to play something different, our personalities are our personalities. So you can't really get away from that. But for some reason, we're still kind of viewed as a new band. And then the other issue is that because we are so dominantly, it's basically, even the first 3 albums were produced or engineered and co-produced by Rich Mauser. So we had all the technical side was also carryover from Spock's beard stuff. I think there's a lot of fans that just kind of see us as a weird continuation. So I don't know what to think of it. I'm still processing it all because when we did the cruises, both venues we played packed. But when you looked at the daily photographs, like this is what happened today on the cruise, we didn't show up in any of the photographs for any day at all. When you looked at the video, this was the cruise, and look at all the great things that happened. We didn't show up in the video.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea because I know the guys that made these things. They're friends and they're really great guys and really talented. It's like,
Are they though?
Hey,
Are they?
What about us? And it's weird to me because, even if we were a brand new band, you still have the name of Ted. Ted Leonard's been around for a long time. Besides Enchant, besides the Spock's beard, connection, he's also in Transatlantic. He's got a bunch of other things that he's done, on the side that are well respected. Dave is one of the greatest bass players to ever walk the planet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's the strength of the names going into this band. So I'm still trying to figure out
maybe
what the fans think of all. I'd love fans to talk about that. I'd love them to tell me, like, what do you think of this? Why don't you think this is it's not an ego thing. It's not, why is the band more famous?
It's not.
That's
It's
not it at all.
legitimately a curious topic, and I'm wondering if the people you're talking about it that didn't put it in the daily features, if they're as confused as the fans, so they didn't know how to frame it or present it or know what was really going on. I don't know.
Well, there's things like people will. I see a lot of people talking about their favorite band, and they'll say, "Oh, Riverside and these other progressive rock bands, great bands." It's really nothing to do with them, other than these fans will talk about, "This is the best album. This is the band." Hey, did you hear the Pattern Seeking album? Oh yeah, no, I got it right here. It's great. Well, how come you don't talk about us? You talk about these guys, and you talk about these guys, and you talk about these guys, but we never come up when you're trying to get there's a festival coming up. You should get this band. You should get Tesseract. You should get this band. When do we come up in that? You
And why
said we were the
not?
best album of the year 6 months ago.
That's
It's like,
just bizarre.
why don't we come up? So it's like I said, it's not an ego thing.
It's
It's
not.
a
It's not coming off that way either. It's like I said, it's legitimately curious. It is.
I really think that it's like we're kind of just sort of taken for granted. Well, yeah, of course it's a great record. Those are great guys.
That's still
Yes.
there's still a
so,
disconnect.
so
Yeah.
and like now we put a new album out now. So the online magazines will say this is going to be, we've already had one magazine say this is already, record of the year for me. I haven't heard anything
Wow.
else, and it's like record of the year. I'm like, wow, thanks a lot. That's really nice of you. We'll see.
Yeah. Steven's mentioning in the comments, he says, I think Arc of Life had a similar situation, completed an album and weren't able to tour because of the global situation. And they've put out 3 albums. But not only that, you've got, Billy Sherwood, you got John Davison, you have Jay Shellen, you got all these members from Yes. And whether you like it or not, folks, they're members of Yes, and they're in this other band together as well. So there's a bit of a parallel there, no pun intended.
I believe another friend of mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve will comment. Who's the guitar player? Who play? Can't think of his name. I'm embarrassed. Yeah, Jimmy Hahn. Thanks, Steve. Jimmy Hahn.
Oh, then and Dave Kersner's in it,
And Dave, yeah, duh, yeah. So kind of the same situation in a way, and they have not gotten the pub that they deserve either. They're like in their own shadow, I think.
Yeah, because a bass player friend of mine, Jennifer Overly, sang some stuff with Billy and these, and I think it's these guys. I'm pretty sure it's this.
You should get with them and do a tour.
Sure.
I mean, that's a good match.
Kersner and I have talked a few times about the idea of connecting somehow, because he has multiple projects. I mean, his own solo projects do really well, and they're great records. We've talked about that, but it still comes down to the simple fact that touring in Europe now is obscenely expensive. Yeah. I mean, just renting a bus is like 40% more expensive than it was the last time I went through Europe.
Is it mostly the fuel cost there? Because
it's the fuel costs, it's the rental costs, the backline costs have gone up, and the guarantees from most of the places have gone down. So when you start putting together a series of dates, you usually get some kind of a guarantee just to make it worth our while to come there. You make some kind of a deal, like either we know you're gonna sell this many tickets, so you take this portion, whatever the deals are. They're just way lower than they used to be. So, when we try to book these tours, any one band can't do it.
Yeah, economically,
you have to go over with like 3 or 4 bands, but then 3 or 4 bands means 2 buses.
Right. It
means these obscenely long shows every day, or it means that every band only gets to play like 40 minutes or an hour. The headliner only gets, an hour and a half at the most.
Yeah.
And then who's the headliner? Because everyone's right around the same.
Everyone's, and everyone gets a smaller slice of the pie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's tricky. Like it still doesn't matter because you're still coming back, $15,000, $20,000 in debt.
Yeah, I'm following Mirko De Maio, who's going to be on the show next month on the 29th. And Stephen and I on our other show, Yes Shift, we had Roy Stalt on, who did some work with John Anderson, and they're on tour in Europe right now. And I'm wondering, like, maybe I don't know what the deal is.
I even talked to them. So the last time they toured was with Spock's Beard.
Yeah. And the Flower Kings, for those who don't know, we're talking about the Flower Kings. Great band. Yeah.
So I hit up Royna about doing a double bill with Spock's like 15 years ago.
Oh.
I mean, way back because I had done some session work for him on one of his little pet projects.
So did they not do it because they said, well, where are there pictures of you from the cruise? Just kidding.
Yeah, right. No, this was like Spock's. It was like I was had this concept of let's do Spock's and Flower Kings. They're kind of, a pretty powerful double bill in the prog world. And he was like, yeah, it sounds great. And so the idea of it kind of coming together just kept dodging until finally one year they said, yeah, let's make this happen. It also coincided with the year that I said, I'm out. I'll see you later. Jeez. And they finally put it together. I'm like, oh, thanks. I'm glad I had the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah, anyway. I was surprised when you left. We talked around that time. And I don't know the story behind it. You don't have to tell it if you don't want to. That's totally up to you.
It's weird. Spock's has always been a fascinating band. I mean, initially, it was the brainchild of Neil and Al, but Neil is the driving force. Mm-hmm. He's just a driving force. Period. I mean, it's you wonder why Portnoy's always doing records with him, because it's the only guy that can get away with telling him what to do. It's like, oh, okay. Because Neil's just got this presence about him. And I mean, he enters a room and he kind of owns the room. That's good for some people and not for other people. And when he left the band, it left the band sort of without a leader.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, we're talking about Neil Morse. For those who don't know, because not everybody knows everybody. So I just want to give some context.
Right. I think my AirPods are about to fail here. I'm going to have to put on some other headphones or something.
And while you do that, I'll play a clip. I have a couple of great clips of Jimmy playing, by the way.
Well, anyway, so when the band finally sort of decided, okay, well, this member is the leader or this member is the leader, there is when I came onto the scene. So getting things done was kind of difficult because it required inspiring everyone to do it. And everyone had their lives. So, whereas How to Seeking Animals puts out an album like that, Spock's Beard put out albums, like
the long, laborious process.
And then they would miss really obvious promotional things that frustrated me, because it's like, oh, we should be doing this. We should be working with these people. We should, so there was a lot of frustration. We all get along. I love the guys as friends. Al, Rio, brilliant. But in terms of the business of running that band, because I wasn't officially a band member until, the very back end of that period. And even then, I really didn't have any real input. They listened. I mean, they would listen, but it just really kind of everything fell flat. So I always felt like I was trying to push the broken down car up, up the road. Even though it worked perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with the car. It's just,
I understand what you mean, though. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, go. But again, lovely guys. They're brilliant. I worked on Al's solo album. I worked on Rio's solo album. It's just, I got tired of
the
pushing.
Situation.
Yeah, I got tired of that scenario. Yeah, no, it's not the people at all. It's just a lot of effort for little to no payoff. Yeah. And when it did pay off, and we did make a record, nothing really came of it. It was always kind of like, oh, that's it. And they were great records. They were really awesome. I really am proud of those records. And it just always felt like, oh, we could have done a lot more with that. So,
well, for those who are not familiar with your playing, and for those who are, I want to play a video. And it's funny. I read this off, and Steve was on with me before you came on. And I said, yeah, I've got the Drum FU2 video to play. And he corrected me. He said, no, pretty sure it's Drum Fu 2, the legend of Taekwon Drum. So we're gonna play that, and then we'll come back with more of Jimmy Keegan and talk about the late, great, I won't give away the name yet, but a mutual friend who was an awesome drummer, musician, iconic. But first, let's catch Jimmy on the drums. Here we go. good, a freaking machine. Before we talk about our friend, I got to ask you, if I wasn't watching that, I would think there's a lot more double pedal work than I'm actually seeing. It's really all in your hands. The stick control and the drum head response and the great sound. I got to ask, what drum heads are you using in that video?
That's the Drum Food 2. I think those are I was going back and forth between a couple of heads. I generally use just classic clears. That's what's on here now. But for a period of time,
which brand? I'm sorry.
Aquarian classic clears.
Aquarian. Okay, because I just got their heads, the new 2-ply, the Super 2s, and I just absolutely love them. I mean, I just put them on over the weekend. They're amazing.
Yeah, I like the Super 2s a lot too. The Response 2s are a little too heavy for me. But for a period of time there, I was using the Modern Vintage mediums.
I have those on
my jazz
head kit. Yeah,
the 1-ply head, but it's the thicker coating.
Yeah,
I think that's what might be on that video.
Okay,
I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember what I had at that time. I do that. I go through these periods like, oh, I'll use the Modern Vintage. Now I'll use the texture coated. Now I'm going to use the classic clears, and and I keep trying to use the 2-ply heads, and it's like I want to hear the drum ring go more. A lot of the newer drummers are, they play such quick, the Eric Moore type stuff that they use the really thick, heavier heads, so the drum just goes duh.
Yeah.
I like the drum to go boom.
Me too. I haven't had bottom heads on my drums since 1983.
So yeah, you get an immediate cutoff. Yeah, you get immediate.
I love the boo. They ring out because of the way I have them tuned in the heads I use. But these new Super 2s, I'm really digging. Best bass drum sound I've ever had. I forgot the name of the head, but it's got the ring in it on the inside.
It's a super kick of some kind.
That's what it is, yeah. And I'm new to the head, so I don't even have the whole specs memorized other than the Super 2s are 2 layers, a 5-ply and a 7-ply. They just sound great. I love them. Very melodic, and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I use a Force 1, a clear Force 1.
Okay.
Which is a single-ply head, but it has
the same ring
rim. It doesn't look like the Super 2. Okay. That black, thick, line around the edge, and then a white thing.
Yeah.
The Force just looks like a traditional head with a little bit of additional drum head material inside, kind of mutes it a bit.
Right.
I've been using that. I don't know. That's like the first drum head I tried with them.
Cool.
I've tried all the super kicks at some point or another, and they're all great. I still like the one. That's the one that just speaks the best for me.
That's cool. Are your ear pods also your microphone?
Possibly.
Because I think it's starting to like fade out in and out a little bit.
I can fix that.
Okay. And then what we'll do is you'll hold up your phone and we'll both show our pictures of the guy that we're going to talk about. And then I'd love for you to share a funny story about him that you have from knowing him.
Cool. Is this better?
Yeah.
Can you give me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So you have that picture ready that you showed me earlier?
Sure.
And I'll grab mine and then you'll tell a funny story. One of the greatest drummers ever. Everyone know who that is? Well, believe it or not, that's me with a little bit of hair, but that's Alan White. With me in 1990, and with you, what year was that? Like 2009, 7, something like that?
That would have been the second year. It was like 9 years ago, 8 or 9 years ago. So it's
12 maybe, or
12 or
14.
13, something like that. Yeah, something like that.
Cool. And you knew Alan for a long time. We knew him probably around the same time. Do you have a funny story to share? I mean, you're laughing your head off there. You might not remember what happened there, but obviously he's a funny
just him
guy.
telling. That's just him telling me stories of the sessions that he did. And a lot of people, most people know him as the drummer for Yes, Forever and Ever and Ever and Ever. But the slightly less well known is that he played on the song Imagine from John Lennon.
Yeah.
He played on Nobody told me there'd be days like these. Instant Karma.
Instant Karma with George Harrison. He played with Joe Cocker.
Right. So he's one of those guys. He's one of those rare guys that's had some kind of a relationship with all of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And he can sit and tell a story and with complete humility talk about, well, we were doing this session and George came in and he's talking about his buddy George, Harrison. And and George sat down and started and he'll tell me the story of George, being clever and funny, because George was very clever. And he would tell this funny story of George, and a few minutes later he'd say, well, when Ringo came in, Ringo was, I'm like, okay, hold on. But he had, just sitting with him, we were doing this signing at NAMM for Yamaha drums. He played the DTX.
Yeah, the electronic drum.
He's obviously played Ludwig most of his life.
Yeah.
I play Yamaha drums, so with him being DTX, and maybe we ended up sitting next to each other just by coincidence. So he spent the whole, because you do these signings for about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. And
for 2.5 hours, he just sat and told me stories. And usually with a clever punchline or, some kind of crazy thing. That, or he'd be sipping on something.
Yeah.
And that would start to have an impact.
On the story.
But we did this, we sat together for 2.5 hours. I sat together with him for about another hour and a half at a Dynacord electric drum thing years before that. I saw him, countless times. I would never say that I was his dear friend. We were good acquaintances. We'd run into each other at events and, clinics or, concerts and stuff like that. And he was always fantastic. I end up on one of the Cruise to the Edges, like the first or second one that I do when Yes was still on them. And I run into Reek Havoc, who's his longtime tech. And I've known Reek as well for ever. His whole relationship with Simmons Drums. My relationship to Simmons Drums goes back to the mid 80s when they started.
Yeah. I still have mine.
Oh my God.
From 82 or 3. SDS6.
So
black ones.
Yeah, mine were black as well. So I run into Reek on the boat and we're chatting, old buddies and whatnot. We're walking through the boat. And I said, well, where's Alan? He goes, where do you think Alan is? So he takes me to the bar. And it's the one inside. There's a bar inside the casino. And Alan would go there. Actually, a lot of the upper scale musicians would go there because it tended to be the quietest place. Oh. In spite of the casino noise. Most people didn't go in there because a lot of the people are like, I'm not interested in the casino on these, Cruise to the Edges. There's a few people in there, but it tends to be the quietest place. And so he brings me in. Like I said, I've hung out with him countless times. He knows my name. Yeah. We've emailed each other and everything like that. And I walk in and Reek goes, hey, Alan, look who I ran into. And he turns around and he goes, and he looks me square in the eye and goes, so I'm kind of going, and I looked at Rick and Rick's like, I have no idea. What the hell was that all about? And I'm like, how you doing, man? It's been a minute. And I'm thinking, well, maybe, he's had a couple too many for the day or something. I don't know. I'm trying to think of why in the world he would look at me like he has no idea who I am. And he looks around and he goes, are you just going to stand there? Well, what would you like me to do? And he goes, sit down and have a drink with me. And I sit down. I don't drink, but I sit down with him. I'll get a soda. And I sit down with him and he goes, I'm like, oh my God. And he finally grabs me and he goes, oh, I had you going for a long time. You thought I would forget who you are. I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of did.
That's funny. That's funny. Bless his heart, Alan White.
And that became what he did to me every time he saw me from that point on. He'd walk up and I'd walk up and go, hey, Alan, what's going on? He'd go, it's like, screw you.
That's hilarious. Thanks for sharing that.
Or he'd say something like,
chime in, tell us where you're watching from. Make sure you check out that link that Stephen put in where you can get the new album that's coming out, Spooky Action at a Distance. But before we go and ask a couple more closing questions, I want to show another video of Jimmy Keegan. I believe this solo is called Faster, Faster drum solo. Or is it Faster, Faster?
It's well, I kind of made a gag about, a lot of these kind of gospel chops drummers coming out, and it's like all their drum solos are just about how many notes can I cram into the shortest amount of time.
What does that have to do with the gospel? I never understood that. But
I haven't really. I don't know, but it's great. I mean, there's always something cool to be learned from everything. It's fan. There's a lot of brilliant drummers, and they're all doing their thing. But I just kind of comically said, here I'm going to sort of. There's a bit of satire in this drum fill, because it starts slow and then it goes, it's my version of that, even though those guys are doing a lot more intricate things than I'm doing.
Yeah.
But it so happened that when I made the video of it, the image that came up on YouTube as the placeholder
thumbnail,
was that expression of me kind of like, and I just thought it was funny, so I called it Faster, Faster, because it looks like I don't know. I saw something kind of bizarre in my expression.
That's hilarious. Let's show it to everybody. Here we go, folks.
And the main groove in that is jam. Michael Jackson. Take a go, go. Get jam. Take a go, go. It isn't from the original. I just got it from that. I just like that groove.
I love that. You seem very adept to playing to a click.
Yeah, I've played to a click since I was 15.
Wow, that's great.
As soon as computers hit the scene in MIDI, the band I was in back in at Disneyland, and if you saw the Foo Fighters first video when they introduced their new drummer, Josh Freese, they talk about his band that he had at Disneyland.
Yeah,
that would be us.
Wow.
It was two drummers. I played regular drums and he played the Simmons drums, hence my relationship with Simmons.
Oh, wow. Interesting. What year-ish would that have been? 83, 84?
Well, I started the band with the guitar player in 84. We played Knott's Berry Farm for about a year. And then we got picked up by Josh's dad, Stan Freese, who was the booking agent for Disney.
Oh.
And he brought us over initially as a 5-piece. And Josh was all of 12, 13 years old. And he would come to Disney all the time and we'd have him sit in. And eventually, being a Genesis fan, I was like, why don't, and with Simmons being the big deal, and he was a spokesperson for Simmons. He'd done a commercial for him and all kinds of stuff. I just thought it'd be cooler to have him in the band than in another band. It just would make the whole idea of another band, competitive and difficult. Let's just put him in the band. He can do the Simmons, I'll do the regular drums. And eventually the guys agreed to it. And for the next 3.5 years, he was in the band as well.
That's really cool. And I see you have one of those in your hand.
Well, I was going to say you have a mini conga, but I have a mini conga as well. Except mine has little decorations on it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
From a record I worked on.
Nice. That's great.
I've never seen anyone else with a mini conga.
Yeah, I think mine.
Hey, you have one.
Mine might be a little smaller. I don't know. Is it?
I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, you're right. Yours looks bigger, but mine looks bigger when I do that too. Yeah, very cool. So before we go, closing question segment. It's the Jimmy Keegan fun fact segment. So here's my question: when you're not playing drums, recording, producing, teaching, writing, when you're doing something completely away from music, what do you like to do? How do you like to spend your time?
Chris, my girlfriend, and I, just celebrating our 10th year together. Hiking a lot.
Nice.
We get up. One of the neat things about Los Angeles is there's lots of cool little hills and hiking trails all over the place.
Yeah.
And in most cases, people don't even really know about it because they know the city aspect of it, and
right.
They don't really pay attention to the natural aspect. But I'm only a few minutes away from Topanga.
Yeah, and you've got Stony Point at Chatsworth right around the corner.
Oh yeah, that's great. Yeah. We've been up there a few times, but even when we lived further south of here, we'd go up into the Hollywood Hills or go further south, or just towards the beach.
Yeah, Santa Monica Mountains, Mulholland, all that area, Las Virgenes. Yeah,
all that. So that's kind of that. I imagine that if I had more time, I would probably do. I've always been a big whale fan. I'm a frustrated cetacean biologist.
Oh, really?
I love whales.
You know what? Before I decided to become a professional drummer, I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau. So we have that in common. And then my dad took me to see Led Zeppelin, and I said, oh, no, that's what I'm doing.
Same.
What a trip.
Which is when I come see in Phoenix, that's what I'm playing, is a night of Led Zeppelin. So
wow, that's awesome. There's an awesome aquarium out here now. Well, not where I am because I'm in the mountains, but down in Phoenix near Talking Stick Resort, there's a really neat aquarium that's only a few years old. If you have time, check it out. But I know you're on tour and stuff. But so Steven, who's watching, our producer, when he was little, I lived in Ventura, California. And every year I would take the kids whale watching between Ventura Beach and the Channel Islands. And we'd see the orca pods. And it was just there's nothing like it. It's amazing.
Did you ever see a blue whale?
I never have. Not in person, no. Have you?
Me neither. I've seen humpback whales.
Oh, wait. Yes, I've seen the humpback whales, not a blue whale.
Yeah, I've seen humpback whales. I've seen gray whales from a distance. And what we thought were sperm whales, but it was so far away that we couldn't really tell. I mean, usually you can tell by the spout, but it was just a little too far away and too windy. But yeah, just the humpback whales. But that's kind of the goal, is to see a blue whale or sperm whale or something like that.
Yeah, the blue whale's the largest, right?
That's the biggest.
Yeah, and is this ever since you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, the whole Jacques Cousteau stuff just fascinated me as a kid. I watched every special. I was so into it. I used to draw submersibles in a cross section. I designed, I had the ballast tanks, and I was so into it. And then my dad took me to see Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, right. Same. I was literally, I was a marine biologist, cetacean specialist, already had it all mapped out. I was going to do, hey, what's that music you're playing?
Yeah. That's hilarious. I had no idea we had that in common. How funny.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Jimmy, I could get lost. I could get lost in the ocean.
Well, I miss the beach. I lived near like a mile from Ventura Beach for a long time, 14 years. And I miss the ocean. Now I'm in the mountains in Arizona. There's a lake, a beautiful lake, 40 minutes north, Roosevelt Lake. But I like the mountains. I like being out of the big city. But I miss the ocean for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for taking time.
That's a goal too. To be somewhere not in Los Angeles.
Yeah. You'll have to, when you're not on tour, come up here and visit, hang out here. There's some beautiful hiking here.
Oh yeah, I bet.
We're in Gila County. It's just beautiful up here.
I'm close to Thomas Lang.
Oh yeah, that's
I live. He's just a little bit further up the freeway, and
in Calabasas.
I go up to his place
or Westlake.
There's a bunch of guys. Terry Bozzio's up there. Greg
Yeah.
Bissonette is up there. Kurt Pescara is up there.
Yeah.
Thomas is up there.
Don
Myron
Perry.
Grombacher is up there.
Don
Don
Perry's
Perry
up
is
there.
up there.
Yeah.
They all used to be here.
Glenn Sobel's in West Hills.
Glenn Sobel. Yeah, Glenn Sobel lives like 5 minutes from me.
Yeah. Go TP his house.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, leave him a note. Say Dan did it. I don't care.
I'll just write it in TP, just like Dan Shinder
Dan
was
was
here. And then spray it with water.
Funny. All right. I so appreciate you taking time this evening to join us. You're welcome.
Thanks for having me, man.
Anytime. Yeah, absolutely.
And likewise, yeah. I mean, there's,
Thanks.
you and your lovely wife, of course.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Door
it's
is open.
been a while. When January rolls around, before you come out here, let's do this again. Promote the tour. Talk about anything you want. And you're, like I say, you're always welcome to come on and talk drumming, music, hiking, anything, whales, anything you want. Cool. Hang on the
I'll tell
line
you how
with
to-
me for a moment.
Tell you how to identify humpback whales by the
Yeah.
markings on their tail fins.
Absolutely. Cool. Thanks everybody for following what we do. Drum Talk TV, brilliance.com is our new membership site. Go there, check it out. I'm going to talk Jimmy into joining us there. He doesn't even know what it's about yet, unless he's seen the promos. But go there. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're rolling it out now. Get in early, and you'll be part of helping us develop it. That's Drum Talk TV, brilliance.com. Share your brilliance and enjoy the brilliance of others. And we so appreciate you following what we do. Thanks for joining Jimmy Keegan and myself, Dan Shinder, here on Drum Talk TV. We'll see you again soon.
Cheers.